I've always been interested in military history, served 4 years in the Army. When I was stationed in Germany, I had the opportunity to meet and talk to some German soldiers. And that's kind of unique. You know, I talked to my family members who served and all that, and getting the perspective of these German soldiers was like, wow, you know, these are the bad guys. So for me, that was fascinating. And I served in the Bradleys, which is a small armored vehicle, and it was kind of similar to a tank. And I just started to get fascinated with these German Tiger tanks. And I found out a lot about them, and that they were like probably one of the best tanks that was in the war, you know, technical capabilities, all that. And that motivated me. And I actually wrote a letter. Little side interest was writing to these German soldiers who had won the Knight's Cross, which is like the Medal of Honor in our military. So I started writing these guys, and it so happened that one or two of them actually served in Tiger tank units. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I like these Tiger tanks. So I wrote to them more often, and they were super nice guys. And they were actually kind of blown away that there was an American interested in their story. So some of them opened up to me, like really opened up to me, and they started sharing everything. And I was like, man, this is awesome. I got to tell these stories. So I just started compiling all the information I could. That's what started it. These guys didn't have the perspective of like the whole battle. They had what they saw. And because they're stuffed inside these tanks, they see what they see out of these vision slits. The one guy, this guy in particular, Dr. Poltzin, he served as a loader. And he's stuffed inside this thing, right? He's a loader stuffed inside this tank. He doesn't have a vision. It's like he can't see what's going on outside. So just his perspective of what's going on in a battle is to be inside this big metal behemoth and hear rounds hitting the side of it and striking and ricochets, and just every moment was tense, thinking, is one going to pierce the inside of the tank? At one point he said that just for whatever reason he felt the need to drop down, and he ducked, and as he did that, a shell struck the side of the turret, bored its way through, and just sprayed shrapnel all over the inside. And he sat up, you know, after that and realized right where he was, he would have just been peppered, you know, destroyed by shrapnel. And those are the kind of little things, you know. Like I said, it's not, you don't get the whole battle perspective, but to hear them talk about just little incidents like that, that's crazy. And one of the other guys that I mentioned in this book too, Martin Burmester, is a big part of this. He was a gunner in a Tiger. And he talks about waking up in the morning as the sun comes out, there's two enemy tanks, enemy to him, Canadian Sherman tanks, you know, and they're 2 miles away. And he's looking through the binoculars, and he wakes up his commander, and they're like, oh, wow, you know. And so just them aiming up the shot, and just that tense moment as he squeezes the trigger, you know, that kind of stuff is the little bits of these stories that fascinated me, and I wanted to write about it. Everybody thinks World War II Germany, Nazis, they're horrible people, and there's no question about the regime disgusting. War is disgusting, but it brings out some crazy things in people. The majority of these guys, these German soldiers, even though they were the bad guys, the enemy, very small percentage of the people in Germany were members of the Nazi Party. So one of the first things I learned was that these guys were just normal people. Just like my grandfather, you know, my uncles and aunts that fought, you know, that served in the military. Just normal people. So getting their perspective of having been kind of forced into this, or serving out of honor and duty, or serving because it's a family tradition, I just realized these guys are just like my family members, you know. So they're serving in these units. They started to open up more and more, and they would share maybe little diary excerpts that they actually kept, or they'd send me copies of their orders and things like that. And it just started piecing everything together, and I could look into the battles that they were in, but instead of seeing it from the general's point of view or some historian's point of view, I'm seeing it from the guy on the ground's point of view. And for me, I mean, that's the most fascinating. I love the first-person accounts. I love reading memoirs. So being able to actually start to piece together their stories in the context of the battle, of the whole war, for me, that was the best part. That was fascinating. The next one I'm working on, though, is a whole battalion history of the German Tiger Tank Unit 505.